everybody. This is the Jedi. This is so infuriating. These people are a virus to humanity and the biggest terrorists on the earth. I have known that there has been a push by these demonic people now that they could possibly be destroyed in their illegal land heist known as Israel. They've been making a move to try to have a lot of them move to South Africa. I would hope that my people in South Africa, my black South Africans, would begin to push these people out, reject them, and make life very difficult for them. And as it is with South Africa in general, I don't understand how, with all you've been through there, what your history is, why you would allow any white person to have any position of power in the government there. There should be no parties, no political parties there that with white people at all. They shouldn't be able to have businesses and conduct business and things like that. Africa is for Africans. You go to China, you don't see their government being diverse and all that. They're Chinese, their population is Chinese, and therefore their government reflects them. Same thing in Japan, same thing in India. We can just keep going around the world. Africans have to be unashamed and bold enough to say to all white people that this place is for black Africans, and that's it. But that's not the central piece of what I came to talk about. I have also been concerned because there is some history that before they went and started their land heist in Palestine, that there had been early talks going back before most of us were born about setting up their land heist somewhere else in Africa. I don't want to name countries because I can't remember specifically what countries. I'm not going to say it. Anyway, they had designs on other parts of Africa initially before they decided it would be Northeast Africa in Palestine. Now, we know instinctively, those of us who pay attention, that the decades-long conflicts that we're always hearing about in the Democratic Republic of Congo, we've known those have been manufactured. We've known. We don't know who the specific players are, but we know it's a white hand. We know that. We know that. And because of the weak leadership on the continent in general, it's very easy for these white devils to come in and work their evil and their sorcery and take over the resources of countries while controlling the puppet leaders. Those days are coming to an end, especially with the rising of the brothers in the Sahel states, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. We hear that Chad is making moves to potentially join the brothers in the Sahel, and so is Senegal. We're hearing Cote d'Ivoire is making innuendo about potentially joining, and there's some others. I cannot express to you how critical the hour is. The time is now that Africans everywhere, including the diaspora, we must defend Africa with our lives, our very blood, because you're dealing with people who the only way that they've gotten and have maintained everything that they've gotten and maintained is through violence. And they've depended on our naturally docile, nonviolent nature to achieve their goals. It is time that we understand that. You don't go to an armed enemy empty-handed. So we must pick up our weapons and be prepared to fight, to defend the existence of Africa without the presence and the influence of these people. This piece, I had to share this now because this is a piece of the puzzle. This brother is identifying the white hand of the white demons who are specifically involved with just specifically the Democratic Republic of Congo. If you don't know it already, DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, is the richest place on planet Earth, period. While all African countries can make claims of wealth due to their natural minerals and resources with great prestige, Congo is the one that stands out. It is literally the richest place on earth, yet our people live in squalor there. It's a shame, and I guess a blessing, that I'm not wealthy, I'm not powerful, and most of all, I don't have a huge, well-armed army. Because I will put a stop to all this shit. I swear by Allah. I swear by Allah. So we must all do our part. But hear this now. Because their designs are essentially to rule the world. But you must remember there's more of us than there will ever be of them. White people make up the smallest population of people anywhere on the planet completely and totally. Period. Compared to the rest of humanity, there's 3 of them. And yet they're running everything and terrorizing everybody and influencing everything and everybody. And we got to be over that. As it relates to these so-called whites from Europe and Germany and Poland and all that stuff, they're claiming they're the holy people and all that stuff. Throw that shit into the lake. They're just white people. That's it. That's it. That's it. Don't let the little caps fool you and all the other nonsense. That's all fakery. Nothing is more antithetical to holiness and godliness and righteousness than these people. I stand on that. I stand on it. But hear this now. Hear this and we'll discuss.
Guys, this is Dan Getler. This is one of the Zionists in Africa that have been supplying arms to the DRC, to Congo.
He's one of the people who have been supplying arms to, we'll just say the shit starters, and to do their dirty work in the DRC. This is who. This is one of the people who's identifying. Let's go on.
This is the guy that is the linchpin for most of the conflict we are seeing in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. This brings me to my point about what is going on in Palestine today. A lot of Africans have been asking me to draw a parallel between what is going on in Palestine today with the bombardment and the attempts to establish this colonial project in Palestine today and Africa. And I keep telling them there's a correlation. Because of the experience that we as Africans have had, we can clearly understand what is going on there in Palestine. This is a colonialist project. This is a neo-colonialist project, as a matter of fact. The British and the British Empire continues. The Roman Empire continues. And what they are trying to do now is that they are bringing white people from Europe, bringing Ashkenazis from Europe to go to that land, to live among Arabs, and to stay in that strategic location to enable the British and the Americans to continue to steal resources out of not just the subcontinent within of Asia, but also Africa. They want to get resources out of the Middle East. And once they are done with that, they are going to move forward to to the Sinai, they are going to move to Egypt, they are going to come down to the Sahel. And I'm glad that you guys are seeing it today.
Now, inshallah, we will see a continuation of what we're seeing in the Sahel, that we will see more African countries moving in the direction of unity and resistance. We know that Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, they've all thrown out these white-ass French people, thrown out their militaries. This is so key and so huge, because if you don't know it already, the worst nightmare of white people everywhere is that anyone white would be in power in a way that affects their lives. And certainly the most hated is the black African. They don't want it. And I think one of the big mistakes they realized they made was, instead of stealing us from the continent and enslaving us and colonizing much of the continent, they would have been better off trying to just own the continent. But there's too many of us, you see? And so now the sons and daughters and the grandsons and granddaughters of our ancestors now rise to be the nightmare of these people till the last day of the earth. We will not be held down, and we will not be suppressed any longer by these demons. So when he mentions, their intent to, once they finish up in the Middle East, to intensify their goals and aims in the Sahel region and other parts of Africa, I pray that then we will be prepared to put up a bloody resistance, to fight to the death, to make sure that never comes to pass. Let's go on.
What is going on in Palestine today is a disgrace. And this guy is at the heart of the exploitation going on in Congo. There's subtle exploitation by Zionists and their cohorts. People look at nation states and say, oh, America is doing this, oh, Britain is doing this. But there are people that are actually funneling money low-key and are participating in exploiting this system.
Now, I have just correct my brother there. Not correct him, but add to what he is expressing. Because he just gave the example. He said many people think it's these nation states, that you would be able to name that are participating in this, or that are the ones that normally do it. And he's saying, no, it's guys like this that you would know that aren't a nation state, or anybody that you would know that these countries funnel money to, for guys like this fat ass to just carry out their own personal agendas. And I would also add that you should definitely see now that these stinking demonic Zionists run every country. They have infected every society like a virus. They run America. They literally run America. They are America. America is Israel. I'm not being hyperbolic. That is a factual statement of absolute truth, period. And they run and have high influence in other countries as well, other European countries. Do you understand? It's very important to know this. Very, very important. And I have another piece that I just thought about I'm going to show you after this that kind of drives that point home. But I wanted to add that they're definitely funded by certainly America at the snapping of their finger. Because whatever these Zionists say, America does it. Doesn't matter what it is. And every single lawmaker in America bends over for these people and licks their feet and does whatever they ask. Every single one of them. You can't even be a part of U.S. politics at any level unless you pledge your ass to Israel. That's a fact. Let's go on.
And America sending military troops, for instance, to Congo, is to protect the interests and assets of people like this.
You hear that? is to protect the interests of stinking ass demonic lizards like that fat ass.
This guy has destabilized the eastern part of the DRC to the point whereby I think Donald Trump during his early days even sanctioned him. But through his connection in the IDF and through his connection to the son-in-law of Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, before Donald Trump left office, they removed most of those sanctions on him. And I think Joe Biden has reimposed those sanctions on this guy.
And remember that Donald Trump's ugly ass son-in-law is a stinking, blood-drinking, demonic, demonist Zionist. Let's be very clear.
These are the guys that are at the forefront of the exploitation of Africa. And it is clear to me, most of you guys don't even know the story of Rwanda.
Right. And you should know the story of Rwanda, and you should also go and watch the movie called Hotel Rwanda that came out, I don't know, early 2000s. Go and see that. They are pretty damn accurate in a lot of their what they're presenting in the story, and it certainly should be part of your curriculum as it relates to trying to understand the conflict that the major conflict that went on for many years in Rwanda, or the genocide that went on there.
The Tutsis in Rwanda, they had support from the Zionists, and the regime of the Tutsis in Rwanda have support from the Zionists, and they continue to get that support today. The same thing with Uganda and South Sudan. So they are using these countries as a base to exploit the Eastern DRC. I repeat, the exploitation we are seeing in the Eastern DRC today, this is one of the guys, there are so many of them, but this is one of the Zionists that is responsible for the chaos we are seeing in the eastern part of the DRC today. The presence of the United Nations troops there is completely useless. We don't want them there. Let them pack their bags and leave. And let the Zionists go back to where they belong. They are from Europe. They are from Central and Eastern Europe. Let them go back to their lands. And a lot of you keep thinking it's about tribal differences, it's about religious differences. It is not. That is not the point. These guys understand how these things work. So they create a system of divide and rule between us in order for them to come and exploit.
Precisely. So you have to understand that these people are, first of all, they're demonic and evil, that they're beholding to nothing righteous at all. And so you must understand that this will not be something that we will achieve by being nice or diplomatic or trying to pray for our enemies or negotiate with them. No, you've got to be willing to defend this with your life, my people. All of us must. All of us. And we also must be willing to do the same thing to any black Africans who they use as puppets. So we got a two-level resistance that we're going to have to put up, because a lot of their white bullshit comes in a black face that's working for them. That's why you have so many African leaders, quote unquote African leaders, who are compromised, who are just there as puppets and figureheads, but to absolutely maintain the agenda of these white devils. You look at Tinubu in Nigeria, who should be run over by a damn car in my perfect world. You look at William Ruto in Kenya, another one that should be hit by a bus, or anything with four wheels or a train or anything else, just to name a few. Our time is now, my people. Our time is now. We cannot do what we have done before. And most of all, the highest principle we must keep ever in the front of our mind is that if we want something we never had, we've got to do something we never did. Now, as an example of not just what the brother was laying out of what these demons are doing and what their designs are in the Congo, here's an example, everybody, and I want you to see this as what Africa will be if what I'm telling you we need to do is not done. If we're not prepared to lay down our lives and to give our blood, these white devils, these white savages will stop at nothing to keep their grasp and their tentacles in Africa. Remember, just on the continent alone, there's 1.5 billion of us. Do you understand? This is what they did in Libya. But also know this. This is why they're so upset over what the brothers are doing in the Sahel. How dare these damn black Africans try and stand up and tell us what they will do and what they won't, or tell us what to do. This is their white arrogance. You see, all the laws and rules and the United Nations and all the other stuff that they make up is not for them. It's to suppress everyone else and keep everyone else in line. White people have never cared about a single law, not even a damn stop sign. Do you understand? Don't ever fall for that. And a special note, specifically to my brothers and sisters who are on the continent, you must take your cue from those of us who didn't have the privilege of being born and raised on our mother continent. We know these demons better than you. We know them better than you. And you should take and heed our advice when we say to you, stop grinning at these people. Stop dancing for them when they arrive. Stop being so inviting. Because if you go to their countries, they don't do any of that for you. They despise the sight of you. And that's okay. But we should do the same damn thing. The same damn thing. The golden rule is rewritten, everybody. Do unto others as they do unto you. And they don't do the shit no more. Always remember that. Now, let's see a portion of this, and we'll discuss it as we go.
He was dragged from a drain pipe, tortured, sodomized with a bayonet, stripped to the waist, made to suffer from an apparent gunshot wound to the head without pity, while in a pool of his own blood.
Now, let's stop there for just a second. Why this was able to happen is because of what I just said to you. You don't know this white devil the way we know them, those of us who are not privileged enough to have been born and raised on the continent. So these Libyans fell for, at whatever levels, up in their government and probably the everyday Libyan on the street, whatever, they all fall for this grin and this fake friendliness that they approach you with. You don't know the devil is in your midst. You don't even know. And whereas Gaddafi was able to create a paradise society and a paradise country for Libyans, this fork-tongued demon is so good at telling you somebody who's good is bad and telling you someone who's evil is righteous and good. Stop falling for their seduction. Let's go on.
That was the last hours of Muammar Gaddafi in the hands of his Western-enabled rebel captors after his fleeing convoy was hit by drones reported to have been provided by the West.
See?
Later, when his captors were certain of his death, his lifeless body was used as an object to pose for photographs as they yank his limp head up and down by the hair.
And know this, A lot of these stinking Zionists don't come with a white face and a hook nose. You go to Israel and you just look at even you go on Instagram and things like that, and you look at what's happening in Gaza, and you see what some of these Israeli soldiers look like, and you realize what you're dealing with. You see, they go someplace else and they look like something else. You don't know that's the devil in your midst. Just go and make yourself familiar with what a lot of these IDF soldiers look like. Because a lot of them can pass as Arabs and things like that. So be very aware. Keep your eyes open and keep your head on a swivel. This is critical times, and the stakes are too great. Let's go on. In fact, before we go on, because of what I just said, I want to show you this. This is important because the person who is in the video, his presence says to me that the level of awareness is becoming so ubiquitous now across the earth that even someone who looks like this kid would be aware. That's very good news, everybody. See this now.
Isn't it crazy how being Jewish is both a faith and ethnicity?
He says, isn't it being Jewish both a faith and an ethnicity? And this is a Chinese or Japanese guy. Young guy. He's got the earrings. He's kind of modern. You know, he's got the fancy haircut and all. He's a contemporary kid. You see, you would think he would be into, and he might be, but you would just see him someplace and wouldn't know he would have this knowledge or that this has reached him. That's what makes it encouraging. But hear what he has to say. This is so important. And I'll probably stop as we go because I want to be sure you hear everything that he says. You know, the words come up quick and he's talking quick, and I want the point to be made. So bear with me.
Is both a faith and ethnicity. How they are the only minority allowed to shapeshift their demographic.
They're the only minority allowed to shapeshift their demographic
For whatever identitary and political angle they need at the time. And they don't want you to be aware of this cunning upper hand they have slithered themselves into. And they can...
Exactly. And that's why I tell you they're a virus, an infection everywhere they go. And very sneaky and cunning. Hear this.
Cunning upper hand they have slithered themselves into. And they conceal this by changing their names and masquerading as one of us. Jonah Feldstein is Jonah Hill.
See there? That's a famous actor in America, Jonah Hill. But he's Jonah Feldstein.
Jonathan Leibowitz is
Jon Stewart, who I like. I love his show. He has this great political satire and things like that. But he's Jonathan Leibowitz.
Jon Stewart. Robert Allen Zimmerman
That's Bob Dylan.
is Bob
But that's Robert Allen Zimmerman.
Dylan. John Cohn is John...
That's John Kerry, who ran for president a few years ago here in the United States. He's John Cohn.
Kerry. Michael Danielovich.
Michael Douglas. His family is a entertainment dynasty in America. His father, his brothers, but there he is. They're Zionists.
Is Michael Douglas.
He's Daniel Leibowitz, or Leibowitz, or whatever. Danielwich. I don't know the hell name.
J. Scott Greenspan
Jason Alexander is Scott Greenspan.
and is Jason Alexander. Chaim Witz is Gene.
That's Gene Simmons. You see his name? This is how they hide. So that, because if you only saw these names, then it would become clear to the masses, certainly in America, wait, these people are in everything. And they don't just do this in entertainment, everybody. They do it in business, so they run the corporations, they run Hollywood, they run all the major shit, the banks, the publishing houses, everything that you need, the major infrastructure of the country, they take over and run it. And you think you're just working with some white guy or something. But it's one of these damn demons.
Simmons. Stuart Koenigsberg is Woody Allen.
See there?
Lawrence Harvey Ziegler.
Who doesn't know who that is? Who doesn't know who that? Thank God he's dead, but who didn't know who doesn't know who that is
Larry King.
That's Larry King. And I already knew because obviously he has the devil look, that typical look that they have, but also King is also a Zionist name. It's certainly a lot less telling than Coensberg. You see? Wow.
Is Larry King. Nita Hirschlag is Natalie Portman.
See? She's an actress.
Andrew Silverstein
He's a comedian. Andrew Silverstein goes by Andrew Dice Clay.
is Dice Clay. Jerome Silberman is Gene Wilder.
See?
Gal Greenstein is Gal Gadot. Lawrence Garfield is Henry Rollins. Jeffrey Lifschultz is Jeff Ross. Alexander Molinsky is Joan Rivers.
She's dead. What was her name? Alexandra Molinsky. And also, if you don't know this, my people, why they were so interested the moment the fighting broke out in Ukraine, you'll remember that they were like, oh, we have to help the Ukrainians. It's all about the Ukrainians. Well, why they're so fawning over them is because they are nothing but fucking Zionists too. The guy Zelensky is a fucking stinking Zionist. The Zelensky guy in Ukraine. That's why. And many of their stinking devilish asses travel to Ukraine from Israel. You can go and look that up, and I'll bring a piece about it as well. So, Joan Rivers was actually Alexandra Molinsky.
Molinsky is Joan Rivers. Melvin Kaminsky is Mel Brooks. Alan Weiner is Michael Savage. Jacob Cohen is Rodney Dangerfield. Georgie Schwartz is George Soros. And Benzion Wachowski is Benjamin.
That's the head devil.
And Benzion.
There he is. Benzion Milo. I can't even say it.
Wachowski is Benjamin Netanyahu. These Chosenites, especially who get the highest limelight of attention for the Gentile class, always change their names to masquerade as whites on American soil.
See? Whilst
furthering the separation inside their own tribe in secrecy.
See there?
Because they want to conceal the power structure.
That's it. That's the key phrase. It's what I just said to you a moment ago. So that they can blend in and you don't realize, wait, it's them. Because they give you these fake names and you think you just you like some actress and you think she's just whatever fake name she's taken on and she's just some white lady. You work at a job, you think the guy's just some white guy working next to you or your boss or your whatever, and it's really one of these demons. One of these parasitic demons. They're very sneaky. Very sneaky.
And the cultural revisionism operating the system we live in with secrecy.
That's important. The cultural revisionism operating in the system we live in with secrecy. That's so important.
Which is why they embrace wearing the symbolic skin of Gentiles to reframe the narrative in their infiltrated favor, hiding the ideological subversion they are normalizing onto the masses in the world.
That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's so key. It's time people know what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with. And I prescribe, as I've said to you, it is time for Africans, and especially for my brothers and sisters on the continent, you're going to have to put down this, I'm from this tribe, and I'm from that tribe, and I'm Yoruba, and I'm this, and I'm all that. You can get back to that. We must unite around our common enemy. And for diasporans, we got to put all that down as well. We must unite and understand that we are one people with one enemy. And it is only our unity that is going to make us victorious over these demons. Now, I want to go back to the other piece.
Up and down by the hair, something that the West would have seriously frowned at if it were to happen to even an ordinary citizen of theirs. Not to talk of a head of state. Gaddafi's assassination and inhumane treatment were widely celebrated and broadcasted.
This is a Libya that for the first time in 42 years does not have to live in fear of Muammar Gaddafi. He is gone for good, and few, if any, are mourning his passing.
Now, I'm sure that reporter is a stinking Zionist, and if not, he's definitely someone who has sold his ass to the Zionists and Israel. Remember, they run everything, and when you don't carry their water, they destroy your life. You understand? And make sure you don't have a career and all these sorts of things. But you see the propaganda. They want you to believe now that the people of Libya are so much better off. Well, I'm going to give you a list of just some of the things that Gaddafi did, just so we have perspective, so that the ridiculousness of this report and his murder will be more in context for you and more outraging. But it also exposes the depth of deception of this demon. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I needed to skip to this portion to show you this. See this now.
At that point in the history of Libya, the country and citizens were the envy of the world, with the citizens enjoying better social welfare packages than many in Europe and America, some of which are: number 1, Libya has no electricity bill.
No electricity bill. No electricity bill under Gaddafi in Libya. Let's go on.
Electricity came free of charge to all citizens. Number 2, there were no interest rates on loans. The
No interest rates on loans.
banks were state-owned. The loan of citizens by law, 0%.
And also, that is also Islamic law. We don't charge interest or tax on anything, and we don't receive tax or interest. We don't receive it, we don't pay it. So, you can get a loan in Libya interest-free.
Number 3, Gaddafi promised not to buy a house for his parents until everyone in Libya owns a home.
Exactly. He said, my parents will not have a home until every Libyan has a home. And also, after this piece, I encourage you to go and Google what Libya used to look like before Gaddafi's murder. You will be ready to pack your bags and move there. But now it's too late, because it looks like a disaster area. And it's in chaos, and everything that the white devils wanted. You see? But let's go on. He said no, his parents would not have a home until every Libyan had a home.
Number 4, all newlywed couples in Libya received 60,000 dinars from the government, and because of that, they bought their own apartments and started their families. Number 5, education and medical treatment in Libya are free. Before Gaddafi, there were only 25% readers, 83% during his reign. Number 6, if Libyans wanted to live on a farm, they received free household appliances, seeds, and livestock. Number 7, if they cannot receive treatment in Libya, the state would fund them with $2,300+ accommodation and travel for treatment abroad. Number 8, if you buy a car, the government finances 50% of the price. Number 9, the price of gasoline became $0.14 per liter.
0.14 cents per liter. Huh?
Number 10, Libya had no external debt, and reserves were $150 billion.
No debt. And $150 billion reserves.
Now frozen worldwide. Number 11. Since some Libyans can't find jobs after school, the government will pay the average salary when they can't find a job.
Allahu Akbar.
Number 12. Part of oil sales in Libya are directly linked to the bank accounts of all citizens.
See that? Part of the oil sales part of the sales of the oil would be directly deposited into your bank account. So you get a portion of the national resource wealth. You see?
Number 13. The mother who gave birth to the child will receive $5,000.
Boom.
Number 14. 40 loaves of bread cost $0.15.
40 loaves of bread, everybody. You heard the cost.
Number 15. 25% of Libyans had all Elisna diplomas. Number 16. Gaddafi has implemented the world's biggest irrigation project known as the Big Man Project to ensure water availability in the desert.
Now that's just a few. That's just a few. But what did the white demon reporter, Zionist bastard reporter say?
This is a Libya that for the first time in 42 years does not have to live in fear of Muammar Gaddafi. He is gone for good, and few, if any, are mourning his passing.
Few, if any, are mourning his passing, said the white devil. I just read you just some of his accomplishments that were good for the citizenry of Libya. You see? Again, they will tell you that which is evil is good, and that which is righteous is evil. You cannot listen to the forked tongue of this demon. Let's go on.
Today, we can definitively say that the Gaddafi regime has come to an end.
The world is a better place with Gaddafi gone.
You see, this is all your Zionists now in America. Because remember, they run America. So these people will say and do whatever they say. There was even Obama.
Say that the Gaddafi regime has come to an end.
The world is a better place with Gaddafi gone.
But more than a decade after, Libyans and the entire African continent are now more sure than ever of the reasons why the West wanted him gone by every means possible, even if it required disgracing him alive and in death. And their reasons are the same today as yesterday. Africa must not be united.
Boom. You see, that's why I began with the piece that I begin with, everybody, and telling you that we must be prepared and understand that whether we like it or not, and whether we want to or not, there is no time for philosophical wranglings on this. Every African on the continent and across the diaspora, across the entire world, must understand that we have to be prepared to defend Africa with our life if it is ever going to rise and be what it should have been many, many decades ago. And you must teach your children this principle. Your children must understand that. Their allegiance needs to be to Africa and its honor, its greatness, and its success. You must teach that. You must. You must. Africa must never be free and must never be united. Because they know that when Africans take control of Africa and its riches, all these white demons will have to kneel before us for their very day-to-day meal. They know it. They know it, and we must know it. We must know it.
Africa must never be free.
Gaddafi died in the Andrews.
So they'll tell you Gaddafi is the worst thing on earth when it's always projection. Anything they're telling you about somebody else is exactly what their demonic, slithering, snake, fork-tongued asses are. Every single thing. You remember when they started the genocide in Gaza, what did they say? They were beheading babies. They were raping women. They were cutting their body parts off and putting them in microwaves. And they were being raped. And they were named every. But we turn out they're the ones that do all of that. It's them. It's them. They are the evildoers. They are the ones, not the people of Gaza.
Jalil Abdulaziz, a doctor who accompanied the body in the ambulance during the 120-mile drive to Misrata, said Gaddafi died from bullet wounds.
1:45 in the afternoon in Cairo, Egypt. Live continuing coverage here on Al Jazeera of a day of mass protests. They called it a day of rage, and it's fast turning into that.
The more unbelievable pictures you're seeing there.
I think that's from Egypt. And another message for all black Africans across the diaspora. Just because Egypt is Africa and Morocco and there's other countries in Africa that don't look like us, we got to be over them. Anyone who serves this white devil, we must disassociate and isolate. We must. And historically and currently, Arabs don't like black people. From Africa to America, doesn't matter. They don't like black people. They're just as racist as this white devil, most of them.
Live on CNN. Why are you here today?
I'm here because look at what's happening. Young Kenyans are demonstrating for their rights. They're demonstrating.
And then this is in Kenya, obviously.
With flags and banners. I can't even see anymore. Take off talking. Tear gas. We should not be it's our nation. We have to be
You can hear that even the reporter the camera person could hardly breathe.
In this video, we review how the West conspired individually and collectively to pauperize the continent and prevent every effort and attempt at having a united Africa. While we are at it, support our work by kindly hitting the thumb button. Share with friends and families to keep spreading our eye-opening Black narrative. And subscribe to stay with us for more interesting, revealing videos. Let us delve in. Early in the morning of October 20th, 2011, Gaddafi, his army chief Abu Bakr Yunus Jabbar, his security chief Mansour Dao, and a group of loyalists tried to escape in a convoy of 75 vehicles. A Royal Air Force Panavia Tornado, during a reconnaissance mission, spotted the convoy moving fast after NATO forces intercepted a satellite phone call made by Gaddafi. NATO aircraft then fired on 21 of the vehicles, destroying one. An American Predator drone controlled from a base near Las Vegas fired the first missiles at the convoy, hitting its target about 3 kilometers west of Sirte. A moment later, French Air Force Mirage 2000D fighter jets continued the bombing.
You see, Americans, then the French, these are nothing but white people. We don't make any distinction because they come from a different part of the world. They speak with a different accent or different language. They've got pig-colored skin. That's who we're talking about. They are the same people.
NATO bombing immobilized much of the convoy and killed dozens of loyalist fighters. After the first strike, the convoy split into several groups, with a subsequent strike destroying 11 vehicles. Rebel units on the ground also struck the convoy. Several videos related to the death were shown on television and circulated on the internet.
We'll move on because, I just want to touch on, and I'll link this, but I just want to get to specific examples of the concerted effort to frustrate the progress of Africa.
From North Africa to South, East to West and Central, Africa has not been known to enjoy relative peace for a long period at a time. Ever since the conquest and slave trade era with the eventual European countries meeting at the infamous Berlin Conference of
Let's also throw out this term European, everybody. You got to call a thing a thing. And too many of our people and our young people in many parts of the world, we lose them. We got to speak in clear language so they know always who and what we're talking about on any subject. So you got to say white people. You got to say that. Language matters. How you think and speak is how you relate and react. They see us as one thing. White people see us as one thing. That's it. And they're very clear about their definitions and descriptions. And we got to do the same thing. So we don't care if they come from the land heist known as Israel, from France, from Britain, from America. It doesn't matter. White people. Period. That's what we must understand. Let's go on.
Ever since the conquest and slave trade era, with the eventual European countries meeting at the infamous Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 to partition and share Africa among themselves, it has been from one internal and interborder crisis to another in Africa, mostly with the hidden hands of Europe and America, and in recent times, Russia and China. The Berlin Conference, which many have classified as the worst act of injustice and human rights violations, gathered a bunch of Europeans to plot ways to divide up Africa, may not have been the start of colonialism.
Exactly. And what we're seeing in many of the countries that I named for you earlier is they're getting rid of the French language. And I say to all my Africans in any country that you're listening to on the continent, use your own language. Stop using the languages of these demons that don't even live in your country. I was in Senegal last year. Alhamdulillah. Or actually, well, we're 2025 now, so I was there in 2023. Around this exact same time, actually. And even though I knew they spoke French in Senegal, it was a different experience being there. I found the feelings that came over me were fury and anger, disgust and disappointment and sadness that here I was in a black African nation where everybody was speaking the language of these demons that don't even live there. That made me sick. Sadly, I didn't have the privilege of being born on the continent and raised on the continent. I was born in this seat of the devil, this throne of evil known as America. And we live amongst our former slave owners every goddamn day. So for that reason, I speak the language of this devil. But you on the African continent have no excuse. Stop teaching it to your children and you stop speaking it yourself. Stop it. Let's go on.
Conquest, as many have chosen to refer to it, but it sure accelerated the process. The conference was set out to achieve 3 objectives and consequences. First was to recognize the territory that King Leopold II claimed as his private property. Isn't that intriguing?
And he was responsible, this Leopold demon, and that may not have been his name, because again, I've already shown you they hide their name and their identity, so you don't know they're one of these stinking Zionists. But it doesn't matter, because these attributes are consistent across white people as a whole. So we don't make the distinction if they're claiming they're a Jew and all this other nonsense. That doesn't mean anything to us. We need to be clear about our identification, how we label them, not what they label themselves. But he is responsible for millions of deaths in the Congo. This devil, this one, thank God he's dead.
Leopold II claimed as his private property. Isn't that intriguing? Claiming what is today known as a country with indigenous people and landowners as someone else's private property? How funny. The second objective was to recognize some existing territorial claims in different parts of Africa. While the third and most important result of the conference was to set up a way for Europeans to claim and annex whatever territory was yet unaccounted for in Africa.
That's the other thing, too. You see, they come armed or in a group. That's the only time white people are tough and bold and brave, is when they are in a group or when they are armed or both. They act like a mouse when they are alone and unarmed. It is highly essential that all Africans across the diaspora find their weapon of choice. You're not going to be able to show up empty-handed to fight a violent beast.
Within the first and second objectives. In a pictorial illustration of the conference, all of the elements were there. It was a conference about Africa, but happening in a room in Berlin, Germany.
And they still do that to this day. They still do that to this day. They're in some other country. It's all white devils sitting around some table deciding what's going to happen to Africa. You saw when even the last coup that was staged in Burkina Faso, and the devils were calling from France and the United States and wanted the ECOWAS countries to go in and attack their own brother on behalf of this white devil. And they were ready to do it, with Tinubu at the lead, which is why I said he needs to be run over by a damn car. You see? This still goes on. It's going on now as I speak to you. You even have venture capitalists and private investors. They're planning their whole fiscal budgets and future wealth and business moves and everything based on Africa. So we got to stand up and say, nah, because we're not plotting on their stuff, because they don't have a damn thing without Africa anyway. But I need you to understand that the Berlin Conference is still going on now. It's still going on now.
0 Africans, and only 2 of the attendees had ever stepped foot on the continent. A continent which is about 3 times larger.
See that? In this conference, he's saying there was no Africans obviously there, and only 2 of the attendees had ever even been to Africa. But there they are, white asses were, sitting around deciding everything for Africa. How have we let this come to pass, everybody? My question is slightly rhetorical because, as I say, we are a docile, nonviolent, inherently righteous people. And we can still be that. But you got to know when it's time to show your fangs and when it's time to draw blood and fight.
In a room in Berlin, Germany, with 0 Africans, and only 2 of the attendees had ever stepped foot on the continent. A continent which is about 3 times larger than Europe. Instead, it was a bunch of European men, representing 12 countries in Europe, plus an American representative and one from the Ottoman Empire. The room was dominated by a gigantic map of Africa. Why? Because the job the men at the conference had taken upon themselves was to divide up Africa between their respective countries. Before the Berlin Conference and then afterwards.
You see that? This is the result of King Leopold II. How they mutilated our people. Don't ever let any white person tell you about somebody else being violent. Don't you ever let them convince you that somebody else is a terrorist or that somebody else is a savage. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. Don't allow it.
The gruesomeness and cruelty have always been unimaginably out of this world to Africa.
Now, even this picture at the bottom, you see this white devil standing there next to these 3 strong Africans, just them alone. Why didn't they choke him out at least? You have to wonder what is in the hearts and minds of a people that one man would be able to. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? When you see how police treat black people in America, a lot of times you see brothers and or any of our people, and you see that if that bastard wasn't standing there with a gun and a badge, and backup, he would be flattened. He's only tough because he's in that Halloween costume and because he got a gun and backup. That's it. He would never approach that same person if he wasn't in uniform and if he didn't have a gun on his side and he didn't have backup. He would never even approach that person. Let's go on.
Which they still see as personal and national conquests. But most especially in the 21st century, the sense of ownership has been more brazenly disastrous. So much so that anybody or any nation who dared to push for the idea of a united Africa must be taught a lesson. More than once, a fatal lesson. From the gruesome assassination of the likes of former Libyan ruler Muammar Gaddafi and others who have ever dared to vigorously push.
You see? Gaddafi, this is Patrice Lumumba, Rahimahullah, and this is Thomas Sankara, Rahimahullah. And this brother, his spirit has returned to the earth and is incarnated in our brother Ibrahim Traore. Allahu Akbar.
Push for the unification of Africa, to proliferation of arms and ammunitions, funding and equipping of insurrections and rebellions, coups and counter-coups, harboring dissidents and enemies of states, using international media and propagandas to misinform, disinform, instigate, and amplify crisis. The list goes on. And perhaps the worst of it all, impoverishing the continent directly and indirectly, and while claiming to help, use financial and economic means through Western institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Funds, IMF, to insist on policies known to set Africans, nations, and governments against one another.
You see that? And most of these bastards standing up here are puppets and crooks. Wimps. No fight, no heart of the lion, and don't give a damn about their people. Not a damn.
The likes of which we recently witnessed in Ghana, Nigeria, and the smoldering one in Kenya. All these were what the late Libyan ruler wanted changed with a united African entity called African Authority.
Right, and he also was trying to start a continental currency that would be backed by African minerals and precious and critical minerals and resources. It would crush this fake dollar. Crush it to death. Crush it to death.
But the West knew the implications. Who lets a cash cow free? Gaddafi must have sealed his fate at the end of the 2010 African Union, AU, summit in Kampala, Uganda, where the Libyan leader said that his dream of a United States of Africa was still alive, and the week's African Union summit was another step toward that objective. Gaddafi has been pushing for an African unity government for years, saying it is the only way Africa can develop without Western interference.
Exactly. I want to move on.
Likes of Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, who was overthrown in a coup with the help from the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, while Patrice Lumumba, the first Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, President of Burkina Faso Thomas Sankara, Sylvanus Epifanio Olympio, the first President of Togo, and many others were assassinated for their anti-imperialist stance.
You see, the moment as long as you're grinning in this white devil's face and doing everything that he wants you to do, he'll act like he's your friend and you're the greatest thing on earth. But the moment you express your own humanity and individuality, certainly as a nation, or they don't get their way, they're ready to kill you. From leaders of nations to the bitch next door, they are the same. They are the same. They are the same. But as I said to you, why what I'm saying is so important, everybody, is because, and I'm using this as an example to show you what they will do to Africa. They will continue to keep it poor and continue to try to destroy countries that stand up and things like that if we are not all willing to defend it with our lives. There's been no less than 20 attempts on our brother in Burkina Faso, the Honorable Ibrahim Traore. But his people are with him. When he made the announcement that they were going to build up their army, 90,000 people stepped forward to volunteer over what they already had. 90,000 people, everybody. Allahu Akbar. 90,000. And when I've listened to interviews of the everyday Burkinabe citizen on the street, they all say they'll defend Burkina Faso with their life. That's where we gotta be. That's where we gotta be. Because that makes it harder to get to your leader and tear down your agenda.
Presently, the situation in Libya is so deplorable.
Look at that. That's why I said you should go and Google and see images of what Libya looked like before the murder of Gaddafi. And these images will have more weight for you.
The situation in Libya is so deplorable, especially security-wise.
Look.
That at the time of production of this video, home offices of many countries still warn their citizens from traveling there.
See there? All because of this white devil. They were able to convince enough people that Gaddafi was such a bad person, and certainly they sold it to the rest of the world, even if they couldn't sell it to the Libyans. And now you see the state of the country. It's completely divided, completely in chaos, looks like a disaster area in a war zone. It's very sad. It's very sad. This bastard that's right here across from Muammar Gaddafi, I forget his name, but he used to be the president of Gabon, everybody. And this is definitely an older picture because he was so old and so disabled that he nearly fell his old bitch ass over on the French bitch, that the president of France, when he went to on one of his visits to France. He was shaking and he could barely stand up. He literally almost fell over on the French president. Literally. And then they installed his son after him. And it just, I mean, it's a total disaster. And the last time that I followed up on Gabon, I think they had gotten to him and ousted that guy or whoever it was that went after him or something like that. But there his bitch ass is right there. You see? That's why I said we have to deal with those amongst us, because it was known, Gaddafi's intentions and what he was trying to do was known. There have been meetings with, the African Union, all this stuff. So this traitor is standing there grinning and beaming, and he's a traitor. They have to be dealt with the same way as this white devil. They have to. Anyone standing in the way of the progress of Africa must be seen as the enemy of our people. It's just that simple. A little bit more and we're going to move on. Or we'll be done, I mean.
The creation of the African Authority must not see the light of the day. The West realized that they could not shrug away Gaddafi's attempts at uniting Africa. The same way it slipped by them when the then Organization of African Unity, OAU, morphed into African Unity with the first move made in Sirte, a major city in same Gaddafi's Libya. Same Sirte he was eventually murdered in. Watching the turn of events as pushed by Gaddafi, power brokers from Western countries in Europe must have realized that Gaddafi's united Africa was going beyond a joke. That they could not afford the mistake of watching OAU transforming to AU to repeat itself. That the formation of a united African body would spell doom for their hold on the continent they have held by the jugular for centuries. It was at that point that Gaddafi's fate not to push his agenda further must have been sealed as the West made sure that he was assassinated just about a year later.
So, as I said, I will link this, and I'm even going to continue, everybody, with, I'll be touching on this more, and, definitely 100%. It's not even a question, because it's one of the central principles that we must understand and adopt when we think about the independence of Africa. We think about Africa becoming one United States of Africa. When we think about Africa rising and being successful in that rising, we have to understand that there is a deliberate and ongoing planned agenda to make sure that Africa does not become united or independent. We are going to have to fight. That is not a question. We are going to have to fight. I invite you to subscribe to the channel and join our family here on Jedi Africa. And I ask you to also give the video a thumbs up, everybody. I thank you for viewing this video, and I hope that you will also take time to share the video as well. But for now, I'll leave it here. This is the Jedi.